The blood-red sunset painted the distant prairie as Willa Brenner stared at the simple white veil in her trembling hands. In less than 24 hours, she would become Mrs. Harrington, wife to the wealthiest cattle baron in Kansas Territory, a man 30 years her senior with cold eyes and colder hands. It was 1871, and at 20 years old, Willa had few choices beyond accepting Marcus Harrington's proposal after her father's unexpected death left the family ranch drowning in debt. "A fine match," her mother had whispered, relief evident in her voice. "We'll never worry about food or shelter again." But as Willa stood on the rickety porch of their small homestead outside Ellsworth, Kansas, she wondered if survival alone was worth the sacrifice of her heart. The spring wind blew across the plains, carrying the scent of wildflowers and distant rain. She inhaled deeply, committing the smell of freedom to memory. "Miss Brenner." A deep voice startled her, causing her to spin around. At the bottom of the porch steps stood a tall man, perhaps 25, with sun-bronzed skin and eyes the color of summer sky. His dark hair curled from beneath a worn cowboy hat, and trail dust covered his denim pants and cotton shirt. One hand rested casually on his gun belt, the other held the reins of a magnificent Palomino horse. "I'm sorry to trouble you, madam. Name's Jack Zimmerman. Your mother hired me to help with the south pasture fence before your wedding tomorrow." Willa nodded stiffly, clutching the veil tighter. "Mother mentioned someone would be coming. The tools are in the barn, Mr. Zimmerman." His gaze lingered on her face, then dropped to the delicate lace in her hands. Something flickered across his features, a shadow of understanding, perhaps even sympathy. "Pretty thing," he said quietly, nodding toward the veil. "Though I reckon even the finest lace can feel like a noose when worn unwillingly." Heat flashed across Willa's cheeks. "You presume too much, sir." A small smile curved his lips. "Maybe so, wouldn't be the first time." He touched the brim of his hat. "I'll get to that fence now." As he walked away, Willa found herself watching the confident stride of a man who answered to no one. Freedom personified, something she would surrender forever at tomorrow's altar. "Willa," her mother's voice called from inside. "Come help with the washing. Your sisters need their dresses pressed for tomorrow." With one last glance at the cowboy now leading his horse toward the barn, Willa tucked the veil into her pocket and went inside, trying to ignore the strange flutter in her chest. By supper time, dark clouds had gathered on the horizon. Willa's mother, Willa Brenner, insisted Jack join them for the evening meal as thanks for his hard work. "The fence looks proper now," Willa said, passing a plate of cornbread. "Marcus will be pleased to see things maintained when he returns from Topeka tomorrow morning." "Glad to help, madam," Jack replied, his eyes briefly meeting Willa's across the table. "That's quite a property line to maintain alone." "Well, we won't be alone much longer," Willa smiled. "After tomorrow, the Harrington Ranch hands will see to everything. Marcus has promised to move us all to his main house." Willa's younger sisters, 13-year-old twins Abigail and Emma, giggled excitedly at the prospect. Only Willa remained silent. "So you're marrying Marcus Harrington?" Jack asked, addressing Willa directly. "Yes," she answered, her voice flat. "I've done some work for him in the past. He's—" Jack paused, seemingly choosing his words carefully, "a successful businessman." The loaded silence that followed told Willa all she needed to know about Jack's true opinion of her future husband. Later, as thunder rolled across the prairie and the first heavy raindrops began to fall, Jack prepared to leave. "You shouldn't ride in this weather," Willa protested. "The storm looks fierce. We have a spare bed in the lean-to. I insist you stay until morning." Jack glanced at Willa, who stood quietly by the fireplace. "I wouldn't want to impose, especially before the wedding." "Nonsense," Willa replied. "You can help us load the wagon for church tomorrow. It's the least we can do after your hard work." As her mother arranged Jack's accommodations, Willa slipped outside to the covered porch, watching lightning split the darkening sky. The wind had picked up considerably, whipping her skirts around her ankles. "Beautiful in its way," Jack said, joining her. "Nature's fury." It reminds me that some things remain beyond man's control, Willa replied, despite our best efforts to tame everything. Is that what Harrington's doing, taming you? She turned to him sharply. You're being impertinent, Mr. Zimmerman, Jack, he corrected. And yes, I suppose I am. His expression grew serious. I've seen women marry for security before. Some find happiness, others don't. I have no choice, Willa whispered, the admission escaping before she could catch it. There's always a choice. Might not be an easy one, but it's there. A particularly violent gust of wind swept across the porch. Willa had taken the veil from her pocket again, running the delicate fabric between her fingers. The sudden blast tore it from her grasp, sending it swirling into the stormy air. No, she cried, lunging forward. Jack leaped from the porch, chasing the dancing veil across the muddy yard. The wind carried it higher, teasing them both until finally, with a spectacular jump, Jack snatched it from the air. He stood in the pouring rain, holding the now soaked veil, his hat tumbling from his head in the process. Rather than rushing back to cover, he stood there, rain plastering his dark hair to his forehead, and looked at Willa with an expression that made her breath catch. Then he smiled, a genuine, radiant smile that transformed his entire face. "Hold my hat," he called over the storm's roar, nodding to where his hat had landed near her feet. "I'll hold your heart." The words, spoken in jest but laden with something deeper, struck Willa like lightning. She felt a warmth spread through her chest despite the chill of the evening. When Jack returned to the porch, dripping wet but triumphant with her rescued veil, their fingers brushed as she took it from him. "Thank you," she said softly. "Some things are worth saving," he replied, his eyes never leaving hers. That night, Willa lay awake listening to the storm rage outside, her thoughts even more turbulent than the weather. For the first time, she allowed herself to imagine a different future than the one arranged for her. A dangerous thought, surely. Yet she couldn't stop picturing Jack Zimmerman's rain-soaked smile and the promise in his eyes when he'd said those words. Morning dawned clear and crisp, the storm having blown itself out overnight. The ground was muddy, puddles reflecting the bright blue sky. Willa dressed mechanically, helping her sisters prepare while avoiding her mother's excited chatter. "The wagon's stuck," announced Jack, coming into the kitchen as they finished breakfast. "Axle deep in mud near the barn. I can't get it free alone." Eleanor paled. "But we must leave within the hour to reach town in time for the ceremony." "I can ride to the parson's place," Jack offered. "Ask him to delay until the afternoon." "No," Eleanor shook her head. "Marcus is very particular about schedules. He's arriving on the morning train from Topeka and expects us at the church at 11 o'clock sharp." "Then I'll go fetch him and bring him here," said Jack. "Parson, too. The ceremony can happen in your parlor instead." Willa felt the walls closing in. The very idea of marrying Marcus Harrington in her own home, in the place where her father had lived and died, seemed a desecration. "I need some air," she muttered, hurrying outside. The morning sun sparkled on the puddles dotting the yard. Willa wrapped her shawl tighter and made her way toward the old oak tree where her father had built a simple swing years ago. She hadn't sat there since his passing 6 months prior. The leather seat was damp, but she didn't care. Pushing gently with her foot, she set the swing in motion, closing her eyes as memories washed over her. "Your pa built that, didn't he?" She opened her eyes to find Jack approaching, leading his saddled palomino. "Yes, when I was 12, he nodded, stopping a respectful distance away. "My father built something similar for my sister before he died. She still sits on it when she needs to think." "Is that what you think I'm doing? Thinking?" "I think you're saying goodbye," Jack replied quietly. "To this place, to who you were here." Willa felt tears threaten. How could this stranger see so clearly what she herself had been unwilling to name? "I'm riding to town now," he continued. "To fetch your groom and the parson," he hesitated. "Unless you'd rather I didn't," her heart stuttered. "What do you mean?" Jack stepped closer, his blue eyes intent on hers. "Come with me, Willa Brenner. Right now. We'll ride south. I have land in Texas, good land with water and grassland for cattle. It's not a mansion like Harrington's, but it's free and clear, and no one there would own your spirit." Willa stared at him in shock. "You're asking me to run away? With a man I met yesterday, I'm asking you to choose your own path," he corrected. "Whether that includes me or not is your decision, but I can at least offer you a way out." "My family needs Harrington's money," she whispered. "Mother, the twins. Your mother is still young enough to remarry if she chooses, and smart enough to run this ranch herself if given half a chance. The debts can be worked out over time. You make it sound so simple. It's not simple. It's probably the hardest choice you'll ever make." Jack extended his hand. "But it's yours to make, Willa, not your mother's, not Harrington's. Yours." She looked at his outstretched hand, calloused and strong from honest work, then toward the house where her future had been decided without her consent. "Why would you do this for me?" she asked. "You don't know me." Jack's expression softened. "I know enough. I know you deserve more than being purchased to settle a debt. I know your eyes hold more life than most people discover in a lifetime. And I know that if you marry Harrington today, that light will dim a little more each day until it's gone completely." From the house, Willa heard her mother calling her name. Time was running out. "If I go with you," she said, her voice barely audible, "there's no turning back." "No," Jack agreed, "there isn't." Willa stood from the swing, her decision crystallizing with sudden clarity. "I need 5 minutes. Wait for me by the creek bend, out of sight from the house." She didn't wait for his response but rushed back toward the house, heart pounding. Inside, she grabbed a small bag and stuffed it with essentials: a change of clothes, her mother's locket, the little money she had saved, and a photograph of her father. "Willa, what are you doing? We need to prepare for Marcus's arrival." Eleanor stood in the doorway, confusion etched on her face. Willa turned to face her mother, summoning all her courage. "I can't marry him, Mother, I won't." Eleanor's face paled. "What are you saying? This is just wedding nerves." "No," Willa cut in firmly. "This is me refusing to sell myself to a man who sees me as property. Father would never have wanted this for me, and you know it. We have no choice. The debts, there are always choices." Willa echoed Jack's words from the night before. "Hard ones, yes, but they exist. You can run this ranch, Mother. You taught Father everything he knew about cattle. The bank will renegotiate if you show them a plan." Eleanor sank into a chair, stunned. "Where will you go?" "South, to make my own way." Willa knelt before her mother, taking her hands. "I love you, but I cannot sacrifice my life for financial security, not like this." "You're going with that cowboy, aren't you?" Eleanor's voice held more resignation than anger. "I'm going with hope," Willa answered. "Tell Marcus I'm sorry for the embarrassment, but not for the decision." Eleanor studied her daughter's face, seeing determination she hadn't noticed before. Slowly, she nodded. "Your father always said you had his spirit. He would be proud of your courage, even if he questioned your methods." She squeezed Willa's hands. "Go, then, before I change my mind and lock you in the cellar." Willa embraced her mother fiercely, then her sleepy-eyed sisters who had wandered into the room, confused by the commotion. "I'll write when I can," she promised, backing toward the door. "And someday, when you're ready, you can visit." With one last look at the only home she'd ever known, Willa Brenner stepped into the bright morning sunshine and ran toward the creek bend where Jack waited, his palomino stamping impatiently. "Ready?" he asked, seeing her approach. "Yes," she answered, surprising herself with the certainty in her voice. He helped her mount behind him, her arms circling his waist as the horse began moving south at a steady trot. As they crested the first hill, Willa looked back at the diminishing silhouette of the homestead, a curious mixture of grief and exhilaration filling her heart. "Having second thoughts?" Jack asked, feeling her tension. "No," she replied, tightening her hold around his middle. "First brave ones." They traveled hard that day, stopping only to rest the horse and eat the simple provisions Jack carried in his saddlebags. By sunset, they had crossed into Indian territory, making camp in a protected hollow near a small stream. As Jack built a fire, Willa took stock of her situation. She had run away with a virtual stranger, abandoning her family and security for an uncertain future. By all logical standards, she had made a terrible mistake, yet she couldn't remember feeling so alive, so present in her own skin. "What exactly is your plan, Mr. Zimmerman?" she asked as they shared a simple meal of jerky and hardtack. "Jack," he reminded her, "and the plan is to reach my ranch in the Texas Panhandle. It's 6 days' hard ride if the weather holds. And when we get there, what am I to be to you?" His eyes reflected the firelight as he considered her question. "Whatever you choose to be, Willa, I didn't help you escape one cage to trap you in another. Most men would expect compensation for such assistance." Jack's jaw tightened. "I'm not most men. You can work as my housekeeper if you want to earn your keep, or I can help you find other arrangements in the nearest town." Or, he hesitated. She prompted, "or you could consider staying. Not as my housekeeper or out of obligation, but because you want to. Because maybe, given time, we might build something worth having." The honesty in his voice touched her. "You're a strange cowboy, Jack Zimmerman." A smile tugged at his lips. "So I've been told." The next morning dawned with a sense of renewed purpose. They packed up camp efficiently, with Willa insisting on doing her fair share of the work. "Harrington will be searching for us," she said as they prepared to mount. "He's not a man who accepts defeat gracefully." Jack nodded grimly. "I know his type. But we have a good head start, and few would look for us in Indian territory." "Is it dangerous here?" Willa asked, eyeing the vast open plains surrounding them. "Less than people think if you're respectful and mind your business," Jack replied. "Most trouble comes from assuming the worst of folks different from yourself." As they rode, Jack shared stories of his journey west after the war between the states, how he'd worked cattle drives and saved enough to buy his ranch 3 years ago. "It was nothing but a run-down shack and overgrazed land when I got it," he explained. "Previous owner had no sense of rotation grazing or water management. Took me 2 years to nurse it back to health. And now it's starting to thrive. Small herd but good bloodlines. Spring-fed creek that never runs dry. House still needs work, but it keeps the rain out and the warmth in." Willa found herself captivated by the picture he painted, not of wealth or luxury, but of honest work and well-earned satisfaction. "What about your family?" she asked. "You mentioned a sister." Jack's expression softened. "Mary's married to a blacksmith in San Antonio. My mother lives with them now. I visit when I can, but the ranch keeps me busy." "And no wife waiting for you?" His eyes met hers briefly. "No, Willa, no wife." On the 3rd day, disaster struck. A sudden rainstorm forced them to seek shelter in a shallow cave. As they waited out the deluge, Jack noticed Willa shivering despite the blanket wrapped around her shoulders. "You're feverish," he said, touching her forehead with growing concern. "Just tired," she mumbled, but her eyes were too bright. Her cheeks flushed by nightfall. Willa was burning with fever, drifting in and out of consciousness. Jack cursed their circumstances, miles from any settlement, with minimal supplies and a storm still raging outside. He cared for her through the night, bathing her face with cool water from the stream, supporting her head as she sipped the little water she could keep down. In her delirium, she called for her father, sometimes pleading with an unseen Marcus Harrington to release her. "Don't let him take me," she whispered once, clutching Jack's shirt with surprising strength. "Never," he promised, smoothing her hair back from her burning forehead. "You're free now, Willa. You'll stay free." Dawn brought a break in the rain and a slight improvement in Willa's condition. Her fever had dropped enough that she recognized Jack when she opened her eyes. "How long?" she asked weakly. "Just 1 night," he assured her, "but we need to find you proper care. There's a trading post about 10 miles south. The owner's wife has some healing knowledge." "I'm sorry to be such a burden." Jack shook his head firmly. "You're not a burden, Willa. He paused, searching for the right words. "You're the bravest person I've ever met." They reached the trading post by mid-afternoon, a collection of rough-hewn buildings where traders, travelers, and local tribes conducted business. The owner, a gruff man named Peterson, took one look at Willa's condition and called for his wife. Martha Peterson was a sturdy woman with kind eyes and capable hands. She helped Willa into their small back room and immediately set to work with herbal remedies and cool compresses. Influenza, most likely, she told Jack after her examination. She needs rest, fluids, and time. A week at minimum before she should travel again. Jack nodded, relieved it wasn't worse. We'll pay for lodging and your care. No need for payment, Martha replied. Just help Joseph with repairs to the horse corral. It's been needing fixing since winter. For 7 days, Willa drifted between sleep and wakefulness while Jack worked alongside Joseph Peterson, repairing fences, a leaky roof, and various other projects. Each evening, he would sit by her bedside, reading aloud from one of Martha's precious books to pass the time. On the 8th day, Willa was finally strong enough to sit outside on the trading post's crude porch, wrapped in blankets despite the warm spring air. "You've been very patient," she said to Jack as he joined her, wiping sweat from his brow after helping unload a supply wagon. "Wasn't much choice," he replied with a small smile. "Can't exactly throw you over the saddle in your condition." "You could have continued on without me," she pointed out, "left me here to recover and sent for me later." Jack's expression grew serious. "That was never an option, Willa." The quiet certainty in his voice warmed her more than any blanket. Over the past week, watching him work tirelessly for her benefit and to repay the Petersons' kindness, she had come to understand that Jack Zimmerman was unlike any man she had ever known. His strength wasn't used to intimidate or control, but to protect and build. "Martha says I can travel in another 2 days," she told him. "Slowly but safely." "Good," Jack nodded. "I sent word to a friend who lives on our route. He'll meet us with a wagon so you don't have to ride horseback the whole way." The thoughtfulness of his planning touched her. "You think of everything," he shrugged. "Just trying to get you home safe." The word home lingered between them, filled with promise and uncertainty. Willa realized she was beginning to think of Jack's ranch as home, though she had never seen it. More unsettling was the realization that home was increasingly becoming wherever Jack himself was. 2 days later, they bid farewell to the Petersons and continued their journey south, now with Willa riding double with Jack again, but at a much gentler pace. True to his word, they met Jack's friend Lucas halfway to the Texas border with a small wagon. "You didn't mention your traveling companion was so pretty, Jack," Lucas teased after introductions were made. "Didn't seem relevant to asking for your help," Jack replied evenly, though Willa noticed his ears had reddened slightly. The wagon made travel easier on Willa's still recovering body, though the pace remained deliberate. During the day, she sat beside Lucas, learning about the territory they passed through while Jack rode alongside or scouted ahead. At night, they camped under the stars, and it was during these quiet evenings that Willa and Jack truly began to know each other. She told him about growing up on the Kansas prairie, her father's dreams for their ranch, and the devastating blow of his sudden death from a heart condition. Jack shared stories of his time fighting in the war reluctantly at first, then with increasing openness as he realized she didn't judge him for his experiences. "I was just 17 when I enlisted," he admitted one night as they sat by the campfire, Lucas already asleep in his bedroll. "Thought I was doing something noble, defending states' rights and all that. Took about 2 weeks of actual fighting to realize there wasn't anything noble about watching friends die in mud and blood." Willa listened silently, understanding he needed to unburden himself more than he needed her commentary. "When it ended, I couldn't go back to Tennessee, too many ghosts, so I headed west with nothing but my horse and the clothes on my back." He poked at the fire with a stick, sending sparks spiraling upward. "Worked cattle drives, ranch hands, anything that paid, saved every cent." "For your Texas ranch," Willa said softly. Jack nodded. "For a fresh start, somewhere I could build instead of destroy." In that moment, watching his face illuminated by firelight, Willa knew she was falling in love with him. Not the desperate, clinging love of a woman rescued, but something steadier and deeper built on admiration, understanding, and growing trust. The feeling terrified her. "I should rest," she said abruptly, rising from her place by the fire. "Good night, Jack." If he noticed her sudden withdrawal, he didn't comment on it. "Sleep well, Willa." The following afternoon, they crossed into Texas. The landscape gradually changed, becoming more rugged, with rolling hills and scattered groves of oak and mesquite breaking up the prairie. "We'll reach my place tomorrow," Jack told her as they made camp that evening. "Lucas will leave us at the crossroads in the morning." "Thank you for your help," Willa told Lucas as they shared a final meal together. "I'm sorry to have interrupted your own travels." The older man waved away her apology. "Any friend of Jack's is worth helping. Besides, gives me stories to tell when I get to San Antonio." "Just make sure they're the right stories," Jack warned good-naturedly. "Don't need rumors flying about." Lucas gave him a shrewd look. "Seems to me some rumors might be warranted the way you two look at each other when you think no one's watching." Willa felt heat rise in her cheeks, but Jack merely chuckled and changed the subject. The next morning brought both anticipation and anxiety. As Lucas departed with a cheerful wave, Willa found herself alone with Jack once more, facing the final leg of their journey, having second thoughts. Jack asked quietly as they watched Lucas's wagon disappear over a distant hill. "Not about leaving Kansas," she answered honestly, "but I'm uncertain about what comes next." Jack helped her onto his horse, mounting behind her this time so she could lean back against his chest if needed. "What comes next is entirely up to you," he said as they began moving at a gentle pace. "I meant what I said that first day, Willa. You're free to choose your path." They rode in companionable silence through the morning, the rhythmic movement of the horse and the warmth of Jack's presence lulling Willa into a peaceful state. Around midday, they crested a hill, and Jack reined the Palomino to a stop. "There it is," he said quietly, his breath warm against her ear. "Home." Below them stretched a modest valley bisected by a creek lined with cottonwood trees. A small herd of cattle, perhaps 50 head, grazed on the lush spring grass. Near a stand of oaks stood a cabin, larger than Willa had imagined but still humble, with a covered porch and a stone chimney. Nearby stood a barn, corral, and several smaller outbuildings. "It's beautiful," Willa breathed, taking in the peaceful scene. "It's not much compared to Harrington's spread," Jack said, a hint of uncertainty in his voice. Willa turned slightly to look at him. "It's everything that matters." Something shifted in his eyes, then hope, perhaps, or resolve. Without another word, he urged the horse forward, down the hill toward the waiting homestead. As they approached, an older man emerged from the barn, shading his eyes against the sun. When he recognized Jack, he broke into a wide smile and hurried to meet them. "About time you showed up," he called. "Was starting to think you'd decided to stay in Kansas after all." Jack dismounted, helping Willa down carefully before turning to the man. "Hank, this is Miss Willa Brenner. Willa, this is Hank Porter, my neighbor and the man who's been keeping an eye on things while I was away." "Pleased to meet you, Miss Brenner," Hank said, tipping his hat politely, though his curious eyes darted between her and Jack. "The pleasure is mine, Mr. Porter," Willa replied. "Thank you for watching over Jack's property." "Least I could do," Hank responded. "Everything's in order, Jack. Cattle are healthy, no predator troubles. Rosie had her calf 3 days ago, fine little heifer. Appreciate it, Hank. I'll settle up with you tomorrow." The older man waved dismissively. "No rush. Why don't you get the lady settled in? She looks about ready to drop." Only then did Willa realize how exhausted she felt. The excitement of seeing Jack's ranch had temporarily masked her fatigue, but now it returned in full force. "Come on," Jack said gently, guiding her toward the cabin while Hank took charge of the horse. "Let's get you inside." The cabin's interior surprised Willa. Though simply furnished with wooden chairs, a plank table, and a stone fireplace, everything was immaculately clean. Curtains hung at the windows, and a braided rug covered part of the plank floor. It wasn't fancy, but it was far from the bachelor's quarters she had expected. "Mary insisted on civilizing the place when she visited last year," Jack explained, seeing her expression. Said no brother of hers would live like a heathen. She did a lovely job, Willa said, running her hand along the back of a chair. It feels like a home. Jack showed her to a small side room with a narrow bed, apologizing for its simplicity. It was meant to be Mary's room when she visits. You can rest here while I see to things outside. Left alone, Willa sat on the bed, emotions washing over her in waves. After nearly 2 weeks of travel, hardship, and illness, she had reached safety. But what now? What place could she make for herself here without becoming a burden or obligation to Jack? She must have dozed off, because the next thing she knew, the quality of light had changed, golden evening sun slanting through the window. The smell of cooking food drifted under the door, and she could hear Jack moving about in the main room. After splashing water on her face from the basin he'd provided and straightening her travel-worn dress as best she could, Willa emerged from the bedroom. Jack stood at the stove, his back to her as he tended to something in a cast-iron skillet. He had changed into clean clothes and she noticed with a small smile had recently shaved. "That smells wonderful," she said. He turned, a genuine smile lighting his face at the sight of her. "Nothing fancy, just bacon, potatoes, and some dried apple slices Mary left last time. Hope you're hungry." "Starving," she admitted. They ate at the simple table, the conversation flowing easily between them. Jack told her about his plans for the ranch, expanding the herd gradually, breeding for hardiness rather than just size, perhaps adding sheep next year if the market held. "And what about you, Willa?" he asked finally. "What are your plans now that you're here?" The question hung in the air between them, weighty with possibilities. "I don't know," she answered truthfully. "I haven't thought beyond escape until now," Jack nodded understanding. "You don't have to decide tonight or tomorrow or next week. You're welcome here as long as you need to figure things out." "I can't simply live off your charity indefinitely," Willa protested. "It's not charity," he replied firmly. "If you want to contribute, there's plenty of work on a ranch. Or in town. Clearwater's only 10 miles west. Small place but growing, might be opportunities there." "And us?" The question slipped out before she could reconsider. "What are we to each other, Jack?" He set down his fork, his blue eyes serious as they met hers across the table. "Whatever we choose to be, Willa. I won't pretend I don't have feelings for you, feelings that have grown stronger every day since we met, but I won't pressure you either. You've had enough of men making decisions about your life." His honesty disarmed her. "I have feelings too," she admitted quietly, "but I'm afraid." "Of what?" "Of trading one dependency for another, of making choices based on gratitude rather than other things." Jack nodded slowly. "That's fair and wise." He stood, collecting their empty plates. "So we'll take time. You'll find your footing here, decide what you want, and I'll be here when you're ready, whatever your decision may be." The next week passed in a blur of activity as Willa adjusted to life on Jack's ranch. True to his word, he never pressured her, maintaining a respectful distance while still being unfailingly kind. During the day, they worked separately, Jack with the cattle and fields, Willa taking over the household tasks and starting a small kitchen garden. In the evenings, they would sit on the porch, watching the sunset while sharing stories of their days. Gradually, Willa began to feel useful again, her confidence returning as she mastered new skills and contributed meaningfully to the ranch's operation. On Sunday, Jack took her to Clearwater, a small but growing town with a general store, saloon, blacksmith, and newly constructed church. The townsfolk greeted Jack warmly, their curious glances at Willa mostly friendly if inquisitive. "Jack Zimmerman, you've been holding out on us," declared the plump woman who ran the general store after Jack introduced Willa as a friend from Kansas. "Now, Mrs. Holloway, it's not like that," Jack began, but the woman waved away his protest. "High time you had a woman's influence around that place," she continued, giving Willa an approving once-over. "Lord knows you've been alone too long for a handsome young man." Willa felt her cheeks warm but found herself smiling at the woman's forthright manner. After church service, several of the local families invited them to share their picnic lunches. eager to welcome the newcomer. By the time they headed home that afternoon, Willa had received 2 invitations to ladies' sewing circles and an offer to help at the school once it reopened in the fall. "They seem to like you," Jack observed as they rode home together on his Palomino, Willa seated behind him, her arms comfortably around his waist. "They were very welcoming," she agreed. "It's a nice community. Small but good people mostly, they look out for each other." Willa rested her cheek against Jack's back, inhaling the now familiar scent of him leather, sunshine, and something uniquely Jack. "Thank you for bringing me here, not just to town but to Texas, to your home." His hand covered hers where it rested against his stomach, squeezing gently. "I'm glad you came, Willa." That night, unable to sleep, Willa slipped outside to sit on the porch steps. The moon hung full and bright above, bathing the ranch in silvery light. A light breeze carried the scent of wildflowers and distant rain. The screen door creaked and Jack emerged, a blanket in his hands. Without a word, he draped it around her shoulders before sitting beside her. "Couldn't sleep?" he asked quietly. "Too much thinking," she admitted. "About what?" Willa drew the blanket tighter around herself. "About choices. About the future. About how different my life is now from what I expected 3 weeks ago." Jack remained silent, giving her space to continue if she wished. "I was supposed to be Mrs. Marcus Harrington by now," she said softly. "Living in a fine house in Ellsworth, wearing silk dresses and entertaining business associates at elaborate dinners. Do you regret your decision?" Willa turned to look at him, moonlight silvering his features. "No, not for a moment. That life would have been a prison no matter how gilded the bars. And this life," Jack's voice was barely audible. "What is this to you?" "Freedom," she answered immediately. "The chance to discover who I truly am, not who someone else decided I should be." A comfortable silence fell between them as they gazed up at the star-strewn sky. "Jack," Willa said finally, "I think I'm ready." His breath caught audibly. "Ready for what?" She turned to face him fully. "Ready to acknowledge what's been growing between us since that rainy night in Kansas when you promised to hold my heart." Jack's hand found hers in the darkness, his touch warm and steady. "Are you sure it's not gratitude speaking?" "It started as gratitude," she admitted. "But it's grown into something deeper, something truer." She squeezed his hand. "I've had time to stand on my own here, to know my own mind, and my heart wants you, Jack Zimmerman." In the silvery moonlight, his smile was radiant. Slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, he leaned forward until his lips met hers in a gentle kiss that quickly deepened into something more urgent, more consuming. When they finally parted, both breathless, Jack rested his forehead against hers. "I've been waiting to do that since the moment you walked out of your mother's house with that small bag and all that courage," Willa laughed softly. "I wasn't brave, I was terrified. That's what makes it courage, Willa, being afraid and doing it anyway." His fingers traced the line of her jaw. "I love you. Have since that first day, I think." "I love you too," she whispered, the words feeling right, natural, as if she'd been saving them her whole life for this moment. The following weeks were the happiest of Willa's life. She and Jack fell into an easy partnership, working side by side on the ranch during the day and exploring their deepening relationship in the evenings. Jack insisted she continue sleeping in the separate bedroom, his respect for her reputation unwavering despite their mutual feelings. "I want to do this properly," he told her one evening as they sat together on the porch swing he'd built. "No whispers or sidelong glances in town, no doubts about my intentions." "Are you asking me to marry you, Mr. Zimmerman?" Willa teased, though her heart raced at the possibility. "Not yet," he replied seriously. "When I do, it won't be a casual conversation on the porch. You deserve better than that." True to his word, 3 days later, Jack suggested they ride to a special place he wanted to show her. They packed a simple picnic lunch and set out early, traveling west and slightly north of the ranch until they reached a rocky outcropping overlooking a small, hidden valley. A crystal-clear spring bubbled up from among the rocks, creating a tiny pool before flowing down into the valley below. Wildflowers carpeted the ground in vibrant patches of blue, yellow, and red. "It's beautiful," Willa breathed, dismounting with Jack's help. "I found it my first week here," he said, spreading a blanket near the spring. "Come here when I need to think or just be alone with my thoughts." They shared their meal amid comfortable conversation, watching hawks circle lazily in the blue sky above. After they had eaten, Jack grew unusually quiet. "Something on your mind?" Willa asked, noticing his sudden pensiveness. In answer, he reached into his pocket and withdrew a small object wrapped in a handkerchief. Carefully unfolding it, he revealed a simple gold ring with a small pearl set in the center. "It was my mother's," he explained, his voice husky with emotion. "My father gave it to her when they had nothing but dreams and each other. She sent it to me last month when I wrote to tell her about you." Willa's breath caught as Jack slid from the blanket to one knee before her. "Willa Brenner, I knew from the moment I saw you standing on that porch in Kansas that you were someone extraordinary, someone worth knowing, worth loving, worth building a life with." His blue eyes held her steadily. "I'm asking you to be my wife, my partner in all things. To share my name, my home, my future. I can't offer wealth or luxury, but I promise you respect, honesty, and a love that will only grow stronger with each passing day." Tears blurred Willa's vision as she reached out to cup his face in her hands. "Yes, Jack Zimmerman, 1,000 times yes." The kiss that followed sealed their promise to each other, tender yet passionate, filled with hope for their shared tomorrow. When they finally parted, Jack slipped the ring onto her finger, a perfect fit, as if it had been waiting all along for her. "We should probably wait a bit before the actual wedding," he said practically. "Give the neighbors less to gossip about if we don't rush to the altar." Willa laughed, joy bubbling up inside her. "Always so considerate of propriety, Jack. It's one of the many things I love about you. Besides," he continued, pulling her close again, "gives us time to send for your mother and sisters. I'd like them to be here to know they're part of our family too." The thoughtfulness of his suggestion brought fresh tears to Willa's eyes. "I'd like that very much." They agreed on a late summer wedding, giving ample time for correspondence with Willa's family and proper preparations. Jack insisted on building an addition to the cabin, 2 more bedrooms and an expanded kitchen before they married. "Room for guests now," he explained as he showed her the plans. "Room for children later, God willing." The idea of children, their children, sent a thrill through Willa. A family built on love rather than obligation. A home filled with laughter instead of fear. She threw herself into preparations, making curtains for the new rooms, starting a larger garden, and riding into Clearwater weekly to socialize with the women who quickly became friends. Through their church connections, she began teaching reading to several homesteaders' children too far from town to attend regular school. In July, a letter arrived from Willa Brenner, announcing that she and the twins would indeed attend the August wedding. The ranch in Kansas was now being managed by Willa herself, with help from 2 reliable hands. She had renegotiated terms with the bank, and while they weren't wealthy, they were making ends meet. "Marcus Harrington made quite a scene when you disappeared," Willa wrote. "Threatened all manner of legal action, but without a formal contract, there was little he could do. He's engaged now to the banker's daughter from Topeka, poor girl. I pray she has more backbone than I did when agreeing to your match." The letter ended with unexpected warmth. "I am proud of you, Willa. Your father would be too. You found the courage I lacked for so many years. Jack sounds like a good man. I look forward to meeting the person who helped you find your strength." 3 weeks before the wedding, disaster threatened once more. A group of rustlers hit several ranches in the area, including Jack's. They made off with 15 head of cattle, a significant portion of his small herd and income for the coming year. A posse formed quickly, with Jack and several neighboring ranchers setting off in pursuit. Willa watched him ride away, fear clutching at her heart, remembering tales of rustlers who killed without hesitation when cornered. "Come stay with us until the men return," urged Mrs. Porter, Hank's wife. "No sense being alone with those thieves about. but Willa shook her head firmly. "This is my home. I'll not abandon it now." For 3 days, she maintained her routine, working in the garden and continuing the construction Jack had begun, sleeping with his rifle near her bed. On the 4th morning, she was feeding the chickens when hoofbeats announced riders approaching. Heart in her throat, she grabbed the rifle and moved to the porch, only to drop it again with a cry of relief when she recognized Jack at the head of the returning posse. She ran to him as he dismounted, throwing herself into his arms heedless of the dust covering him or the audience of amused ranchers. "You're safe," she breathed, her face pressed against his chest. "Told you I'd come back," he murmured into her hair. "Always will, Willa." Later, he explained how they had tracked the rustlers to Indian territory, recovering most of the stolen cattle in a tense but ultimately bloodless confrontation when the thieves realized they were outnumbered. "Lost 2 head somewhere along the way," Jack said as they sat together that evening. "But considering what could have happened, I'm counting us lucky." Willa studied his exhausted face, noting new lines of strain around his eyes. "I was so afraid, Jack." He took her hand, bringing it to his lips. "Fear's natural, but you stayed, kept things going while I was gone." "That's what partnership means, facing the hard times together, even when we're apart." 2 weeks later, Eleanor and the twins arrived on the stage to Clearwater. Jack drove the wagon to collect them, returning with 3 travel-weary but excited Brenner women. The reunion was emotional, with tears and laughter mingling as Willa showed her family around the ranch that would soon officially be her home. The twins, now 14, were enchanted by everything, especially the horses and the new calves. Eleanor was more reserved, observing Jack carefully during that first day. But by evening, watching him patiently answer the twins' endless questions and the gentle way he included Willa in every conversation, her expression had softened considerably. "You were right to leave," she told Willa that night as they sat alone on the porch after the others had retired. "I see that now. This is where you belong." "Are you happy, Mother?" Willa asked. "Truly," Eleanor smiled, a genuine expression that made her look years younger. "I am finding my way, just as you have. Running the ranch has given me purpose again, and your sisters are thriving with more responsibility." She patted Willa's hand. "Don't worry about us. Focus on the life you're building here." The wedding took place on a perfect August morning. The small church in Clearwater was decorated with wildflowers and ribbon streamers, filled to capacity with the friends Jack and Willa had made. Pastor Miller officiated, his kind face beaming as he addressed the congregation. "We gather today to celebrate not just the union of 2 people, but the triumph of courage, faith, and true love over fear and obligation," he began, causing whispers among those who didn't know Willa's story. Jack stood tall and handsome in a new black suit, his usually unruly hair neatly combed, his eyes never leaving Willa as she walked down the aisle on Hank Porter's arm. She wore a simple dress of ivory cotton, trimmed with lace that Martha Peterson had helped her sew. In her hair were woven the same wildflowers that grew by the spring where Jack had proposed. No veil obscured her face this day, a deliberate choice, symbolic of the honesty and openness that formed the foundation of their relationship. The ceremony was brief but meaningful, with promises exchanged in clear, steady voices before God and community. When Pastor Miller pronounced them husband and wife, the cheer that went up from the congregation startled both Jack and Willa into laughter. The celebration continued at the Porters' larger ranch, with tables set up under shade trees and enough food to feed half the county. There was music and dancing, storytelling and toasting, until the sun began its descent toward the western horizon. As twilight approached, Jack found Willa sitting with her sisters watching the dancers. "Time to go home, Mrs. Zimmerman," he said softly, extending his hand. The ride back to their ranch was quiet, both lost in thoughts of the day and the future stretching before them. When they reached the cabin, their home, Jack surprised Willa by lifting her into his arms before carrying her across the threshold. "Welcome home, wife," he whispered. setting her gently on her feet in the main room, now decorated with flowers and candles by Alina and the twins before they had departed for the Porters where they would stay for a few days. "Husband," Willa replied, the word still new and wonderful on her tongue. Later, as they lay together in the quiet darkness of their bedroom, Willa rested her head on Jack's chest, listening to the steady rhythm of his heart. "Happy?" he asked, his fingers gently stroking her hair. "More than I knew was possible," she answered truthfully, "even without silk dresses and fancy dinner parties." There was a smile in his voice, but also a hint of genuine question. Willa raised herself on one elbow to look down at him. "Jack Zimmerman, I wouldn't trade this life with you for all the mansions in Kansas. What we have is real, it's honest, it's ours." His arms tightened around her. "I'll spend my life making sure you never regret your choice, Willa." "I already know I won't," she whispered, sealing her words with a kiss. The years that followed proved her right. The ranch prospered under their joint care, the herd growing steadily along with their reputation for quality stock. Jack's innovative grazing techniques drew attention from neighboring ranchers, and Willa's garden expanded into a small orchard that produced enough fruit to sell in Clearwater each harvest season. 2 years after their wedding, Willa gave birth to their first child, a daughter they named Grace Alina. A son, Thomas James, followed 18 months later, and then another daughter, Sarah Mary, 3 years after that. The cabin expanded accordingly, with Jack adding rooms as their family grew. Alina and the twins visited regularly, sometimes staying for months at a time. The twins, now young women themselves, brought laughter and energy to the household. Alina, to everyone's surprise including her own, found romance with a widowed shopkeeper from Clearwater during one extended visit, eventually marrying him and moving permanently to Texas. There were hard times, 2 drought years when the creek ran low and grass grew sparse. A terrifying month when 4-year-old Thomas contracted pneumonia and hovered between life and death, before finally turning the corner toward recovery. A fire that destroyed the barn one winter, requiring neighbors' help to rebuild before spring calving began. Through it all, Jack and Willa faced each challenge together, their partnership deepening with shared joys and sorrows. Their love, built on mutual respect and genuine understanding, only grew stronger with passing years. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Jack surprised Willa by taking her to their special place by the spring. There, among the wildflowers that still carpeted the ground each spring, he presented her with a proper gold wedding band to accompany her mother's pearl ring. "Meant to give you this on our wedding day," he admitted. "But the rustlers that summer took the profit I'd saved. Took 10 years, but I finally got it right." Willa kissed him soundly, as much in love with this man as she had been a decade before. "It was always right, Jack. From that first moment when the wind ripped away my veil and you said you'd hold my heart." Jack smiled, the lines at the corners of his eyes deepening with the expression. "Best promise I ever made, best one I ever kept." They sat together by the spring, hands intertwined, watching the sun paint the Texas sky in brilliant hues of orange and pink. Later, they would return to their home, to children's laughter, to work that satisfied, to the life they had built together choice by choice, day by day. But for now, this moment was enough, this reminder that sometimes the bravest decision is to follow your heart, even when the path forward is unclear. That love, when freely given and freely accepted, can build something stronger and more beautiful than any cage, no matter how gilded. "I love you, Willa Zimmerman," Jack said simply, his blue eyes as clear and honest as they had been that day in Kansas when he'd offered her freedom. "And I love you, Jack Zimmerman," she replied. "Yesterday, today, and all our tomorrows." In the distance, a whippoorwill called, its evening song drifting across the Texas prairie as the first stars appeared in the deepening blue sky. And beneath them, 2 hearts beat as one, bound not by obligation or necessity, but by the strongest ties of all respect, friendship, and a love that had only grown richer with the passing years.